This is a podcast from Rover.
Today on the couch we have actor, content producer and mum, Rebekah Randell. Though to most of New Zealand she would be better known as Dawn Robinson from the country's longest running drama, Shortland Street. Hey, thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us today.
Thank you.
I always love when guests say yes to the invite of coming along and talking about their family, so...
I try and say yes to everything, so I guess family's not off limits.
I need a babysitter next week. What are you doing?
Yeah, I will be there. What time? Sign me up.
I love it. Hey, it's always lovely to start with a bit of an introduction of who is in your tribe. So can you tell us a bit more about your family?
Yeah, of course. So in my family, we have got my lovely husband, Bevan, and our 10-month-old daughter, Isla. We don't have any pets. It's just the three of us and, doing life.
I think having a pet at this stage, it's another child, I've been told, because we don't either. My kids every week are like, when will we get a dog? And I'm like, a little bit longer.
Yeah, I'm waiting once she can talk. She's obsessed with dogs at the park. So I'm like, once she can talk, she'll be like, where's my dog? I want one.
Wow. Rebekah, in terms of the first 10 months, because that's how old Isla is, have they been what you expected?
Absolutely not. I don't think anyone can actually really prepare you for motherhood. And I think as well, we kind of got off to a little bit of a rough start. Isla was really colicky. So she screamed all the time, all day, all night. Wow. And weirdly, in a good way, she is our first, so we didn't know any different. We didn't have this angel baby and then suddenly got the rug pulled from out beneath us. And it was actually, a lot of friends were like, no, it's not normal for them to cry that much all the time. Like, obviously we knew it was a lot, but everyone says being a parent is hard. You're in the trenches for the first 3 months. But that was like next level and exhausting. And yeah, I remember about week 7 the wheels really coming off and being like, I can't do this any longer, this is really hard work, crying in the shower kind of vibes.
Yeah, that sounds so tough. So how did you get through it?
Do you know what? I wouldn't have got through it without Bevan. I think the fact that he was such a hands-on dad and so amazing as a support person as well, that was the only way we could get through. And whether she was up until midnight crying or whatever hour in the morning, he would be there in the way of like either supportive. He'd be on the phone if he was at work. At night, he wouldn't go to bed without me if she was still crying. And we would just hold this baby and hand her back and forth to each other until she finally fell asleep, basically. But yeah, it would be midnight some nights and we'd just be at home with her screaming. Nothing prepares you for that.
No.
Oh, Bevan.
Yeah.
Like I want to give him a high five.
Yeah, well done, Bevan.
Yeah, he was incredible. Yeah.
You probably still feel like you're in recovery?
A little bit. I think it's only now at that 10-month point where I actually feel like my adrenals are starting to go back down and I'm really enjoying motherhood. She sleeps through the night now and I feel like myself again. I go to the gym in the morning and I'm getting back that essence of myself. But I could sleep for a year, I reckon. Even with her sleeping through the night, I want more sleep. I'm so keen for it.
Oh, you can be in catch-up for years.
Yeah.
Rebekah, have you found that your community has got bigger or smaller since having Isla? Have you got more in your tribe or you've bunkered down and there's just the three of you?
I think for a bit we bunkered down and it was really just the three of us. And I think friends almost felt a little bit helpless because if you've just got a baby that cries, no one really wants to hold that baby, let's be honest. I did have friends come over and hold the baby while I showered, but I do think for a while our community got really small, but I was actually okay with that. It felt like us getting together as a little family unit and it was us against the world and that was okay. I think we were really ready for that and the people who were supportive would sort of pop in and out or you knew that they were there via message or whatever if you did need them. But yeah, it was really the three of us. Hunkering down.
It's always interesting looking back at your own upbringing. What was it like, your childhood growing up on a dairy farm?
Yeah, so I grew up on a dairy farm in Whangamata. It's honestly, once you start looking back at your childhood, suddenly you're like, oh my God, I had the best childhood ever. It's so nostalgic and so wholesome, and you start wanting that for your own children. The thing that always I think about when I think of my childhood and what I want to give to Isla is that freedom and space to go and play and explore and use your imagination. And those are the things that I think were really nurtured by my mum, whether it was like jumping out of a tree to like catch the fairies, which are like the little sparkles on the ground, on the dew, or playing make-believe in the backyard with your siblings. Those are the things that I've really held on to, and I really want that for Isla. So I'm like, right, we need a bigger backyard. I don't want fake, we've got fake grass. I'm like, none of this fake grass. She needs to go play in the paddocks. But I guess in a way, Mum and Dad are still on the farm, so I guess she'll always get a little piece of my childhood when she does go back to the farm and hang out with Mum and Dad.
Oh, that's so special.
It is.
Really lovely. I hear one of the wise things your dad taught you is there is only 1 week between a good and bad haircut, which I resonated with.
How did you find that?
Oh, my kids don't sleep,
just always
researching
on.
at 2 a.m.
Honestly, I got a fringe and layers at the same time, and I looked like a 40-year-old with a mullet. It was horrendous, and I remember crying, and Dad coming into my bedroom being like, oh, well, it's only a week between a good and a bad haircut, and just thinking that's the worst advice ever. But when you think about it, it's more important things, and give it a week, you get over it.
I just love it. He's like, what do I say in this moment? What could help?
My teen daughter in that moment.
What have you learned about parenting from your own parents?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I think Mum and Dad were just really good at just being like championing us and just saying like, you're doing a great job, and if she's fed and you're getting some sleep, whatever it is, it's working. And they didn't pretend to be experts on kids, even though they'd had 3. Whatever we were doing, they were letting us do it our way, and I think I really appreciated that, especially with what we were going through, because we did get a lot of advice at the time, and I felt like Mum and Dad probably gave the least advice out of everyone.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very affirming.
Yeah.
Little mental note, Jenny. Being a grandparent myself. Yeah. How's your relationship with your parents? Has it changed since having children?
I think it has changed, particularly with Mum. I think you almost suddenly appreciate your mum so much more when you become a mother and find out how selfless it really is. And Mum was a mum of 3. She was also a farmer's wife, so Dad was out on the farm a lot, and she did a lot of the heavy lifting with the parenting, and then Dad would kind of swoop in the evening, and that would sort of be as much as he did. And that was like all day, 7 days a week. It wasn't like Dad was home on the weekends because he still had to work the farm. So I think I have so much empathy for Mum, and honestly, I'm like, you must have been drowning. I don't know how you showered and did everything you did. We never missed a dance recital. My sister had netball. My brother had rugby. Mum was the coach of the rugby team. She was on the board of trustees. She did everything. And now that I have one child, I'm like, how did you fit in time for all of that? It absolutely blows my mind. So yeah, I have a lot of gratitude for my mother and what an incredible mum she was. And I don't know how she held it together.
Does she look back now and go, oh, I did too much? Or
do you know what? I feel like that's a question I need to ask her. But I think Mum and I are similar in the way where I realise if it's for my child, I would do anything. And I think my mum was exactly the same. If it was for the benefit of her children, she would move a mountain or be there or show up for them. So, yeah, nothing was too much of an ask for Mum.
Wow.
Really lovely.
Yeah.
Did you and Bevan have good chats before you had children as to how it was going to turn out or what you'd like to see? Or
Yeah, I remember the last sort of month of pregnancy. Before we got pregnant, we talked about it, but particularly that last month of pregnancy, we talked a lot about the expectations of each other. And I think we were lucky. We were sort of the last in our friend group to have children, so we'd sort of seen everyone else go through it. And also Bevan's really close with his brother Clinton, and we've got a beautiful niece and nephew, so we'd always been around children and seen how a lot of other people parent. So we talked a lot about the expectation of each other, what we wanted for our children, what morals we wanted to install, all of that kind of thing. And yeah, as I was talking earlier, he really lived up to that expectation. He, was just the most incredible support. Unfortunately as well, we've also experienced close friends whose wives have ended up with postnatal depression. So he was always really good at checking in and being like, are you okay? Are you coping? If you're not coping, what can I do to help you out even more? Because we didn't want to go down that path after seeing others suffer with that. So yeah, I think anytime I burst into tears, he'd be like, are you okay? He was probably a little bit too on edge, but you know, it was, I think, even more helpful in the way that we had that hindsight or forward thinking to sort of nib anything in the bud before it turned into something more or manifested into something.
Big fan of Bevan, the more you talk.
He's a sweetheart.
I really like
hit
him,
the
Bevan.
jackpot. I know it as well.
He's also, you mentioned a builder, and I'm wondering, has he built anything for Isla yet, or has he got any plans, in the future of all these things he will build?
I don't know what his plan is, but my plan is like the most epic tree house in the world when we get that backyard with a big, beautiful tree. He hasn't built anything for her just yet, but I guess kind of along that line, it was obviously my first Mother's Day, and he cut out every single photo I had ever sent him of Isla or me and Isla and put it in this ginormous frame, and it was the sweetest thing ever. I was so blown away. So I guess that's kind of building on that crafty kind of level, but other than putting the cot up, no, not anything built technically yet.
You've really shared openly about your journey to parenthood.
Yeah.
And we actually had Josh Thompson on last season, and he talked so beautifully and shared, and he had talked on the project about their journey in getting pregnant. Now, you've shared about your first pregnancy and not making it to full term, and you did an interview. I'm just wondering, did you get a lot of people reach out after that interview?
Yeah, I think the first time I actually shared it was over Instagram, and it was probably 6 to 8 months after it had actually happened. And even when it was happening to me, I remember saying to Bevan, I don't know when, but one day I'm going to talk about this, because I felt so alone. And that was the driving force for talking about it. I didn't want sympathy or anything like that. I just in that moment had felt so alone. I was like, I don't want anyone else to feel this alone or not know who to reach out to. Had it been my favorite celebrity, my neighbor down the road, like whoever, I just wanted someone to hold me and tell me it was going to be okay. And I don't think this kind of thing happens for a reason, but I'm very much a everything happens for a reason kind of person. And given I had the platform to talk about it, I felt like I really needed to do that based on the way I had felt. So I first shared it on Instagram and wrote a little, post about it and talked about it. And the outpour from that was overwhelming. Like, I think that post had over 25,000 interactions. It was insane. And I think what got to me even more was that many people had been touched or had their own story, whether it was happened directly to them or someone they knew. And I was like, if that many people had also felt alone, how sad is that? So then I did the Women's Day interview, but I never wanted to do that as a sad story. I wanted that to be a celebration. So when they approached me and we were pregnant with Isla, I finally felt like, yes, I can sort of say that this has obviously been our road, but if you're going through fertility issues or you've lost a baby and you feel hopeless, I promise you there is hope. And we're so lucky we live in a generation and a society where there are so many ways and means of finally getting your baby, whether that's medical intervention or, what it might be for you. But I just wanted to give people hope that it didn't happen at first and it broke us, but you will hopefully get your rainbow baby on the other side. So, that was important to me.
I mean, you went through that, and the next day you had to turn up to film at Shortland Street.
Yeah. Weirdly, that gives me goosebumps because I remember so vividly laying in bed crying and, I'm getting emotional, and saying to Bevan, I've got to learn my lines. And I still can't believe that was the thing I was thinking of, but I was so broken, and there was all this medical stuff going on as well, and still having to be like, but I have to show up. And it's not, I guess, nothing against the production. It's also me as a person, as I'm such a, like, if I say I'm going to show up, I'm going to show up. And we were shooting the 30th birthday episodes. We had special guests coming in that I knew I was filming with. So I was like, I can't throw a whole production into turmoil because of me. But I struggled so much holding it together, and I couldn't have done it without my work colleagues. And I'm talking, strangely, it was the men that really held me up, and particularly because my dressing room was right next to where Sam Bunkle, Ben Barrington and Mike Galvin share a dressing room. And they were all in my scenes because I was hosting a stag do for Damo, the character Damo, if you're not familiar with it, with Shortland Street, sorry. But I remember going next door to them because I could hear them all like jovially laughing around and all that kind of thing. And I was like, I just have to tell them because I'm going to get on set and A, not know my lines, and B, barely hold it together. And they're going to be like, what's wrong with bubbly Bex? Like, she's usually the life of the party. And they were honestly the ones that held me together. Mike walked me down to the producer's office and pulled the producers out of a meeting with other, like, I don't even know who the meeting was with, but they were like, is it important? And he was like, yeah, it's important, out of there kind of thing. But just incredible that the men just held me up. Ben Barrington was like running lines with me on set because I was like, I just don't know them. I can't learn these lines. There's so much going on. But in a way, I think you hold a lot of gratitude, and I think it really shows you how much the people around you care for you and care about your life when you do have to show up and you are in a state like that. But some really beautiful, like, now in hindsight, I can take those really beautiful moments from it, and how grateful I am for that Shortland Street family. So as hard as it was to show up, it was still, people really held me and held me really close. So.
And it sounds like they held you and got you through those scenes. But then also I heard that they started to do some changes and give you some time, which, it's a big beast, Shortland Street. But to go, actually, you know what, this is so important, and we are going to adapt, and we're going to give you some time, and we're going to change the scenes, and there's a different storyline. I think it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so I had to work the 3 days after because they're like, we can't change that storyline. And of course, we'd already shot things. It just wouldn't make sense, and it's the 30th birthday. But they literally, the day we talked about it, they were rewriting things. They were casting another character to make it work so I could take time off and A, have the miscarriage, and B, just, get myself together again and then come back to work in a better mental state.
Because I think quite often something like that happens and you do keep it to yourself and you think, they might not understand, or they've got other things they're thinking about. And I think that would make it even more lonely.
Absolutely.
But pretty amazing that you were like, I actually need to share this to get through. And then how everyone rallied around is really great to hear.
Incredible.
We make vows when getting married about walking through the good and the bad. Going through such a tough time, what did you learn about Bevan and marriage?
Oh, I mean... I can't speak more highly of Bevan, and it really shows the man that I fell in love with. And Bevan just gets me. I've always said Bevan, almost before being a husband, is my best friend. He's always been like that as well. He's like the girlfriend you want to gossip with, but he's also the best friend who you confide in. And honestly, like, I don't know how I would do life without Bevan because he's such a wonderful human. And whenever we go through the trials and tribulations of life, he is always the person that shows up for me. And I'm so lucky that that is my husband, because I know not everyone's experience is that. But every time we go through something, I always feel like we come out the other side stronger. And it sounds ridiculous, but I feel like in life there is always something, whether it's Bevan getting appendicitis, or, you know, like there's always those little things. But I've always felt like Bevan and I, we put our heads down, we band together, and then we always come out the other side stronger. And I think that's the same with the miscarriage. That's the same with Isla having colic and being colicky. And even Bevan's mum said to me one day, she was like, you guys just never complain. You just get on with it. And I think that's us. We put our boots on and we just trudge through the mud and we try and make each other laugh through it and have a few smiles. But yeah.
You mentioned in an interview that you and Bevan grieved differently. Mm-hmm. What did that look like for each of you?
I think I definitely found it a lot harder than Bevan. I think Bevan was almost a little bit more matter-of-fact about the situation, and he was, of course, sad, but maybe not as broken and upset. And I think I had a lot of, like, I guess in a way, blame, where I was like, I was too stressed. I kept going to the gym, or it was my body, or, you know, like that kind of thing. And that's ridiculous, because now that you're not in there, you're like, of course it's not your fault. It's no one's fault. These things just happen. But when you're in it, you try and find a reason. And I felt like my reason was it was my fault. I was broken, and that's why this happened. And I found it so hard and cried a lot and grieved a lot. And I think not only grieved the baby, all the plans that I had made in my head for what the next chapter of my life was going to be, where I don't think Bevan had quite got to that point with it. So although he did grieve probably for a shorter amount of time, I think a lot of his grief process actually became more about holding me up and helping me through what I was going through. And probably because he can be a little bit black and white, it was like, okay, what's next? Let's go to the doctor's appointments and the specialist appointments to actually have the miscarriage and that kind of thing. And I feel like I was just in this absolute haze, and his way of grieving was like, okay, what are the facts and what happens next, and taking on the information side of things. And then in the months after that, where felt like forever to get pregnant again, it was like a constant. Every month there would be tears multiple times, because either I hadn't got pregnant yet and I was just so desperate to get pregnant, or feelings around the grief or the loss, or any of that. But he just became this like deep-rooted solid tree to hold me up.
Once you got pregnant with Isla, did you get to enjoy the pregnancy, or because what had happened already, were you sort of walking around on eggshells a little?
Kind of a funny way the universe gives you things. I got so sick with morning sickness that morning sickness, as hard as it was, and I was sick the duration of the pregnancy, became my silver lining. If I was vomiting, that baby was thriving. So I didn't get a chance to walk on eggshells. I remember one afternoon I suddenly started feeling better, and that was my eggshell moment where I was like, oh, no, something's happened, because now I'm not sick any longer. Next morning I was vomiting again. So
you're like, yes.
Yeah. I mean, weirdly, and like the universe gives you what you need. I was like still vomiting at 37 weeks. And the thing that got me through being so sick was the fact I knew the baby was thriving, and I wasn't worrying so much about had I lost the baby, because, vomited pretty much every single day. I'd start vomiting at 3 a.m. some days. Like, that baby was holding on. So, thankfully, I think had I had a pregnancy with no symptoms, I think that anxious time would have been just so overwhelming. So, yeah.
I've seen photos of little Isla, and she's just such a mini you, like smiling, and she already looks so bubbly at 10 months old.
She's such a delight, and she really loves people, and she's so bubbly. She just almost like loves an audience. She's like laughing if someone's not paying her attention. She'll start coughing to try and get their attention. Like, she's a real little character. She's hilarious.
People will know you. I mean, you've got a familiar face. You're on Shortland Street for so long, and you've got such a following. People want to know what you're up to, and TikTok, I think you've got like over 170,000 followers.
Wow.
So they will be really interested in Isla too. How do you find that, these random people wanting to know know about your little girl?
Yeah, that's tricky because you're like, where do I draw the line? And especially because I'm an open book. If it's about me, I'm an open book. But you do have to learn to draw the line because you're like, that's actually her life, and what do and don't you want to share? And I think my way of doing that is I probably share a lot of the good and not much of the bad. Like when we were going through the colic and the screaming, I'd never once post her screaming because I never thought, I don't think that's fair on her. I never really talked about that, but also because I didn't want the advice that came with it. So I was like, we're just going to be in our little bubble. But yeah, if she's throwing a tantrum, which she started doing, I won't post that because I don't think that's fair on her. But if she's having fun and having a great time and we're having a beautiful family moment, I feel okay sharing that. Yeah.
Parenting's such an amazing combination of magic and mess, and we walk the tension of both. Where would you say you're finding the magic at the moment and the mess at the moment?
I am the world's busiest human. Like, I love being busy. I really thrive off it. So for me, finding the magic is learning to stop and learning to actually sit down on the ground with the books or singing nursery rhymes or whatever. For me, that's magic, and seeing the way that she like lights up when you are spending that real quality one-on-one time with her. But I feel like I had to learn to do that because I'd look around and be like, oh, but that needs to be done and that needs to be done. And I'm such an achiever that if it wasn't getting done, I wouldn't feel like I was achieving. So learning to stand still. And then as far as mess goes, are you talking about the state of my house?
Not physical mess. It could be
No, I think just learning to like go with it. Sometimes naps don't go to plan. So I've learned very quickly to, oh, well, we'll just carry on. She'll fall asleep at some stage. Although we have a little bit of a schedule. She does test me at times with that, where she, and much like me as well, very stubborn. If she decides she's not doing something, that's it. So I think learning to go with the flow is probably, the mess that I wasn't intending on either. I didn't realise how much it's kind of her way or the highway. If it's not working, just, oh well, we'll move on, because at some point today she'll have a nap or she'll eat more when she's hungry. So just keep going. Yeah.
so good. If you can get that early on, it makes for a smoother life.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Trying to let go.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
dropping expectations sometimes, or changing the expectations so that, some of that need for productivity and achievement just has to settle down.
Yeah.
It's funny, I went away for a girls' night, and I haven't done that a lot. I probably should have done it more. I've got a 7-year-old and almost 5-year-old, and my husband knows that, like, I'm away with friends and relaxing, having that time and recharging, but he knows that in the back of my head I'm like, oh, but I'm not being productive. So he painted a fence for me while I was away, so that he knew I'd come back and feel like, oh, something's been done.
Something got done even though I wasn't there. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, that's really lovely, because that's something that I feel like you, that being productive and getting things done. What have I achieved?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love how you've talked about feeling more like yourself, getting that time to go to the gym and do things that build you. Thinking of your career and the next dream, what does that look like for you?
I don't know, and I'm okay with that. That was everyone's question when I got pregnant and then had the baby as well, was sort of like, oh, but what about acting and what about Shortland Street? And I am so grateful to even be Isla's mum, and I think everything comes in seasons, and I had my working hard out season where I'd barely take a breath and I did everything and anything. And now I'm just wanting to enjoy this motherhood season. And saying that, still auditioned. Isla and I actually shot a TV commercial together a few weeks ago, which was really fun. But I'm not out there hustling for this minute. I really just want to enjoy the season of motherhood. And if we're blessed, we'd love to have another baby. So I'm like, oh, well, let's just, go knee deep in mum life and get messy and go to play centre. And and everyone says you don't get that time back. So I don't want to be so focused on career and miss out on her because of that. But that's where I'm at, and she fills my cup so much, and seeing her thrive fills my cup so much that, creatively, I feel quite at peace. Yeah.
Lovely. You mentioned Play Centre and you're doing Space, which got me excited because that's one of our babies at Parenting Place. How have you found Space and just meeting with other parents and other little ones and having that connection?
I have loved Space so much, and I'm actually missing it today, and I was like, oh, damn, I'm missing it. I have loved it for Isla's benefit as well. The songs, seeing all the other mums, and we've obviously all become friends with our littlies, and seeing Isla will go to the other mums and play with the other kids. I also think when you're a new mum, there are so many questions. You don't really know what you're doing. Everyone's winging it. So having that community of mums who are like, oh, wow, we're doing this and you're doing that, and it's all working out. Or if you've got questions, well, what are you doing here, or what are you doing there? It's been so lovely, I think, having that little support network and somewhere to go once a week. And if the babies cry, no one cares. If the babies are happy, that's fine too. It's also really beautiful in the way that, you know, you have a cup of tea and some morning tea, and I actually always walk away from Space feeling really cared for, whether it's by having something to eat there and someone making you a cup of coffee, or by expanding your knowledge on babies or learning something, or just having a conversation that's an adult chat. Because, some days there's a lot of chat and it's just me chatting.
Yeah, I love how Space is so enriching like that, and that there is a community, because I think you really need it. And I mean, it's a long time since I was a parent of a baby, but I remember going to someone's house every week, once a week, and I remember she put on lunch. I don't remember what we talked about, but it was just for new mums, and that's a highlight for me.
Yeah.
Just looking back on the care, it felt like I was cared for and nurtured in that season where I really needed it.
Yeah.
One of the things we know about our little ones is that they grow up and they leave home eventually.
No.
I know, it's hard. It might be 18, it might be 30 before she leaves, but you'll have dreams and ideas of how you'd like her to grow and develop. What would they be for this little person?
Yeah, I've always said I just want my child or children to be really kind, empathetic humans. They're not the souls that want to change the world. I just want them to change someone's day by being kind and being polite. And that for me has always been the most important thing. And that's what I'm really trying to nurture with Isla already. And I think kindness comes from, you know, Bevan and I being kind to each other and what environment she grows up in as well. So, for me, that's probably the biggest of all the pillars that I want to install is I just want a decent, beautiful human. Yeah.
Well, with you and Bevan as parents, I think that is definitely in her future.
I hope so.
I feel like Rebekah was sunshine for my morning today. She was so lovely to chat with and so open. I really appreciate when people take the time to sit with us and they share so openly, because I think for people listening, to feel seen and to not feel alone is just such a gift.
It was such a treat to talk to Rebekah and to hear her delight in parenting, but also know that she's been through some hard stuff and knows that there's probably more ahead. I particularly loved her sort of look at productivity, because I think it reminds me that there's quite a bit of DNA of productivity in me, and that as a new parent, I think you're particularly challenged by the change in pace and the fact that you are not achieving the things you used to. Perhaps you're not earning any money, and you are walking through life with a little person or persons, and things are completely different. And if we don't sort of reorientate ourselves, it can be a really hard sort of journey in parenting when we feel like we're not being productive.
Yeah, and I can totally relate, because I'd always be like, what have I achieved today? And you don't always put on that list, well, I really connected with my little boy, and the giggles and those interactions, they are beautiful. But sometimes for me it was like, what have I ticked off? You know, did I get all the washing done? Did I mop the floors? So something that I used to do was I would have to get out of the house, and then that to-do list didn't follow me because I wasn't home looking at all the things that needed to be done.
Yeah. And then I also think that we can encourage parents to get out and about, which is really important. And also that home has actually got some really good things going for it. So whether it's reading stories down on the floor, you're doing some housework task together, you're singing, your presence is there, your proximity is there. You know, that's what children, it's kind of all they need. And I think sometimes we put a big burden on ourselves to think, I've got to outsource everything and we need to belong to this and go to that. I think those things are really lovely to go to, but I also want to really encourage parents to feel like you don't know how good you are for your kids.
Yeah.
Just being around you, and you maybe going at a slower pace and re-orientating yourself to a slower, less productive, but you are laying lifelong kind of rocks, sort of important things for your child when you are kind of available and you've taken yourself off, I must achieve.
It's so true, because Darcy's starting school just in a few weeks, and I've said to her, what do you want to do? Like you and me, our last adventures before you start school. And I was expecting we're going to go to the zoo, we're going to do all these big things. And she was like, let's do some puzzles and let's read some more books and let's play some Uno and let's go get a fluffy. And you're totally right. Those are the things, because we're connecting. It's not about the big adventures sometimes. It's about those moments. Actually, something too that I thought about, we were sort of all giving high fives to Bevan, Rebekah's husband. But I thought how lovely for her just to be oozing love and acknowledging him. I think sometimes, you know, in this journey of parenting, we don't always stop and just give our spouse a high five. And I know even when my husband sometimes listens to our podcast and he hears me talking about him, he's quite chuffed, because I can do it easier when talking to someone else. But what have I told him this week about, I so appreciate that, or look at you, you know, doing that. You were so present. Thank you for being the best sidekick. So I thought that was a really good reminder for me. And I loved when we talked about the big dream, that she said, you know, I don't expect Isla to change the world, but I do want her to be kind and change someone's day. And I thought, what a beautiful thought. You know, we all have interactions with people and we all can make someone's day better or worse. I felt like she was on such a good path already for achieving that.
I love the priorities that she had, kind and empathetic. And I think that we can have lots of other really good goals for our kids, and we can often want to make sure that they're happy and that they learn skills. And all of those things are important, but sometimes just keeping it simple and thinking, what are the most important values that I'd like my child to grow into? And I think kind and empathetic, when you think of people you know who are that, you think, yeah, you're really lovely to be around. And so that is a great start. And I think how awesome that her and Bevan had talked about it, because sometimes we just head into parenting and then, whoa, we haven't actually talked about what is really important to us. And I reckon children love knowing that you have that as the dream. So if you were to write that up somewhere and really spell it out, we would love our children to be kind and empathetic and to make a difference to someone's day. Children will love seeing that as part of their dream.
Love it. If you want to find out more about Parenting Place, maybe space, like Rebekah talked about being part of that with Isla, then go check out our website, parentingplace.nz. We would love to connect with you.
Rover. Music, radio, podcasts.